Well, hello and welcome to all of our viewers around the world. I'm Fiona Langsharp, IBCLC Director of Communications and MC here at Gold Midwifery. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to be introducing you to our speaker here today. Dr. Hazel Keedle is here with us and going to be talking about new insights into birth plans, research on women's experiences, and provider engagement. Welcome back, Hazel. It's great to have you here at Gold Midwifery again.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me back.
And what a topic. My goodness, I feel like you're just going to blow the lid on things here. New insights into birth plans, research on women's experiences, and provider engagement. I mean, I had to read it again just to take it all in myself. And I know that you're super excited to share on this topic. But why this topic? How did this all come about? Are birth plans, really, are they part of the past? Or is there something new coming up? Share with us.
Sure. So it's actually included in our national survey on women's experiences of maternity care in Australia. So it's a very large survey. We got nearly 9,000 responses.
Wow.
And we covered everything. We actually covered everything from, who the healthcare provider was, their labour and birth, and the postnatal period. But it was also co-designed by our consumer organisations here in Australia. And they helped us even design the survey and what questions to put in. So our consumer organisation said they'd love to learn more about birth plans from the woman's perspective. So we put those questions in. We had a series of questions, and then we had an open question too, asking women, what were your experiences with birth plans? So that's what this data is on. It's really exciting to actually hear it from the woman's perspective.
Yeah, it is so interesting. And I think, there's been some confusion, I think, about birth plans. And there always seems to be these two camps, don't do it, do it, and yet it has been known that for folks that need reassurance or, want to have something that's respected, and then never mind things like cultural things, specific, ways of doing things. I mean, it seems ideal, but is it not cumbersome to the providers to have a birth plan? Like, who's who in all of this, Hazel?
Absolutely. It is a contentious issue. And there are some providers that think that they're too restrictive and that they increase women's expectations, which could then be disappointed if they don't get the plan that they want. But actually, women are really aware of this, and we found this in our responses. They're not actually as rigid as some providers think that they are. There's actually a lot of flexibility from the woman's perspective, and they really do look at what can happen in different scenarios. And really, it's just about respecting women's choices and letting them have the voice in what is going to be one of their most major life events that they've ever had. It may be just another birth to a healthcare provider, but for that woman, there's only going to be a few times that she does that in her life. And putting this birth plan together is actually a way to have her voice heard and her choices and wishes respected. But it's not as rigid as a lot of healthcare providers think. It really does have a lot of flexibility. And women, certainly the women that we surveyed here in Australia, they're pretty smart to realise that it can't only ever be one way, that there has to be flexibility with them.
Interesting. So let's talk about partners. How did partners play? What was the role that they had in this? Did you find out anything about their experience as well? Because I've actually seen birth plans where, and this, to me is always interesting, but where they want the partner doing certain things at certain times and to sort of, make sure that they're engaged with certain elements. How did this all play into it?
Well, in the survey, we didn't actually ask about partners, although we are planning on a partner survey to go alongside a repeat of our national survey, which is quite exciting. But actually, in the presentation, I go into how you can do that in different ways and how I have as a midwife, and I've worked in a variety of different models of care, both in hospitals, birth centres and in the home, where I have looked at how to do birth planning with both the woman and her support person or her partner. And so there are different ways of doing it, and I kind of look into that experience. It is really important to listen to the partner's voices and their wishes and their choices, especially when we can have women and partners who've gone through traumatic birthing experiences in the past.
Right.
We need to be really aware of what is important for the partner, as long as it doesn't, take over anything that is important for the woman. But in my experience, that generally hasn't been the case. It's been very supportive, and they've been really appreciative to have their voices heard as well.
That's awesome. Now, Hazel, you do a lot of, I know you're connected internationally and so forth and so on, but and I, excuse my ignorance for this. Is this just an Australian thing? Like, are we doing it in other places? What's it looking like on the international platform when it comes to this type of conversation?
Sure. Actually, we're looking into that right now because our birth experience study is a global study now. We have over 15 countries around the world who are using our survey. And we've got some of the data back already. We've got data from Sweden, from the Netherlands, from the UK, and from Denmark, and from South Korea as well. And they've used the same questions that we put into our survey as part of our international collaboration. So we will be looking at this. And we've actually got a very interested postdoc student whose PhD was actually all about birth plans and birth mapping. And she's working with us now to look at the data and to look at the paper and bring in some of that international data as well. We know from the background of birth plans that really they came from both the UK and the US around the same time. But
Right.
how this has been disseminated on a more global scale is something that we're really interested at looking into.
So what's the overall, purpose or what have you discovered beyond the original sort of purpose of looking at birth plans? What has come out of it that, has been interesting or maybe somewhat unique? I mean, you seem to have so much joy about this. I know that you love this topic. So tell me some of the things that you've really been engaging with.
I think what comes through is actually how important they are for women and how they can really be an opportunity to have the woman's choices and wishes respected. But I think the other thing that comes through is for women that have had a traumatic birthing experience and how they can then use their choices and wishes or in these birth plans and these flexible birth plans to have a voice the next time round, and how that can actually lead to a healing experience, which is so important. Obviously, what us as midwives and clinicians really hope for, that if someone has a traumatic experience, that next time it's not traumatic. And I think birth plans and from what women have said about birth plans is so important. I think I've been surprised, although maybe not surprised, but maybe a bit disappointed by how many women said their birth plans were not supported, and some of the comments that they received from healthcare providers about birth plans too. And really that kind of disconnect between what the woman wants from it and then what the provider is willing to support. And that's a bit of a shame, because I think overall the message that women then hear is your thoughts and wishes don't really matter. And so I think the powerful aspect of birth plans from the woman's point of view is not always taken into consideration by the provider. And that's, I think, what we can learn as midwives and clinicians, that we
Right.
do really need to work with women to help them create and help respect the wishes that they want for their birth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reality is in a birthing experience, women and their partners will often remember this for a lifetime. And those studies have been, available for quite some time. Having the birth plan not respected, I'm thinking that maybe obviously has long-term impact. So I guess my question is really about the long-term impact that a birth plan could potentially have if it's respected as best to the ability of the circumstance. Are you thinking of tracking this long term to see what, maybe even doing, I don't know, longitudinal studies? I'm just guessing now. I'm thinking of all the things that you could do next, Hazel. But what have you been looking at yourself?
Look, I think there's some great aspects in that, and a lot of my other work is around birth trauma and obstetric violence. So we are looking at that on the longer term. I've been part of a study called Birth in the Time of COVID, which was led by the amazing Professor Hannah Darlin, and we really looked at women's experiences during COVID, but actually we then tracked them for up to 2 years afterwards. And we're working on a paper where we actually asked women about their birth trauma experience all the way up to 2 years. And we've got a really rich data set then of what they said at all the different time points, straight after birth, 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years, to see what changes in that way. And so to do that from birth plans is it's a little bit contextual. It's how the birth then goes. But really, ultimately, if the woman has her birth plan respected and that she feels confident that her birth went and all of her wishes and choices were respected, then that leads to a respectful maternity care outcome, which we know has such a major impact for women. I guess what we can see more of is when it's not respected, and then the woman potentially experiences a traumatic experience, and we are looking at work on the impact that has. But ultimately, you are absolutely right that women do remember this for an absolute lifetime, how they are treated, how they are respected, and what options that they are given at one of the most important times of their lives is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely fascinating. Well, I can't wait to dive into this topic even more. And I'm so delighted to say that all of our viewers listening in today will also be able to come and join us for free. That's right. This presentation is going to be open and access and free. You can watch it live and on demand at goldmidwifery.com. You can register today. Just head over there. You heard me say it one more time, goldmidwifery.com. You can register to listen to Dr. Hazel Keedle. It's going to be such an incredible opportunity to see how this came about, how it now represents what we can do with birth plans, and of course the impact, and what we can do as providers. There's always gaps in our care, and I know we're always trying to close them up, right, Hazel, so that we can do better. But I know that you have some really interesting ways that you've also worked with families with birth plans as well, and so I'm excited for you to showcase that as part of your conference. Thank you so much, Hazel, for being with us today. Always a pleasure to sit down with you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our viewers for tuning in once again. Don't forget, as I mentioned, you can head over to our conference now and register for the entire conference. Still available to you. We've got some live sessions and recorded sessions coming up, but I can't wait for you to come and sit down with Dr. Hazel Keedle and myself. We'll have a great opportunity to answer some more questions and take a deeper dive into this topic. Thank you again for joining us here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye for now, everyone.